Yes, I am alive. I guess to rest any fears, no, I didn't get killed, possessed, kidnapped, or anything like that. Yet. My absence from the logging? Is logging the right term? Charting? My routine of keeping you guys updated with what's happening started here. Because, well, cleaning up the aftermath from the storm with just 2 people took about as long as you'd expect. At first, things started getting... well, let me just tell you. Our minds were a bit confused from our little shopping trip into town. John was in more than fine spirits, and with a trunk full of guns, we were all at relatively high morale. Well, we were until we reached the front gate. Now, the gate and the wall itself were fine, they were all intact, and even then none of the scratches or claw marks on it really disturbed us. No, it was knowing that after the storm for about a week, we had to clean out the front gate and the compound. So when we pulled up and all of the trees in a 10-foot radius around the gate were clawed, battered, and gutted, we knew something had decided to show up while we were gone. What the fuck is all this? Isaac rolled down his window. He got a better look at near 20 mutilated trees around us. I had been to war both across the seas and on home turf. I knew this could only mean one thing. They were sending us a message. We headed inside and, well, the yard, the house, and everything inside of the walls was all unharmed, even as the fog and the mist was still hard from the rain in the estate grounds. John headed up to the house as we circled back with Isaac. It was time to look at what he bought. And well, Jesus. Boxes of firearms, both in wooden crates and plastic gun cases. Boxes of ammunition that look like they belong in a military base rather than the trunk of a poor rent-a-cop and his hick cohort. And tons, and tons, from what my experience says is a little more than across the lines of illegal firearms. I ran a hand over my forehead. The quiet sound of the forest was only permeated by the clicking of the large gun case as Isaac opened it. With eyes as giddy as a kid on Christmas, he popped it open and said, "Ha, let's see what they think of this," and showed me a grade A man killer, a 30-06, a rifle round that has been seriously deadly armament for now just over a century, being used in everything from machine guns to rifles that could, well, knock an engine out of your truck. So when he pulled out the little hunk of battle rifle, I gazed around and I wondered, if all of this failed, then what in the actual hell was going to stop the... Dwight! Isaac! I peered around the SUV while Isaac continued to inspect all the hardware he bought. John? I called back. He just gazed at the doorknob. Shit. Though it was just a pea shooter, I grabbed a small pistol out of the car's glove compartment and I hurried up. I wasn't greeted by some monster, ghost, goblin, or forest ghoul. Just yet another message. A dog collar hanging on the doorknob. A good 20-30 meters inside the impermeable security wall, with the name Richie carved onto the dog's tag. It's not the obviously scary things that haunt you. It's the out-of-place ones that really get under your skin. And boy oh boy, I was preparing myself to see a lot of that shit for the next couple of days. The storm has completely shaken up the forest. Branches, rocks, hell, even entire fucking trees collapsed along the miles-long perimeter around the estate. And due to public land regulations and the deputy enforcing them like an absolute fucking prick, he stated, quote, "The staff of the Kazamoth Estate grounds must clear up and maintain their trail to meet county standards and the blah 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 blah. You get the point. And due to the fact that no one wants to stick their heads anywhere in these woods besides, well, Isaac and I, that meant that this was going to be a very lengthy process. Even more so, we were down one entire ATV. 3 days after we arrived with our new equipment, Isaac and I hit the trail. Standard stuff at first, really. Move this boulder, clear this tree branch, scare off the leapfrogging naked men with a rifle shot into the air, hook a chain from the top side of the tree into the rear of the other ATV and painstakingly move it over to the other side of the trail. Pretty standard stuff. Until one day, a few hours past noon, we came across this just absolutely monstrous oak tree. I mean, this thing was fucking giant. I don't know how the hell the storm managed to uproot this thing, but it was laying straight across the trail. Full head of branches and all. We tried hooking up a chain to it, and I gave my best shot trying to push it from the other side. But all we got was the ATV kicking up tons of dirt. It was a half hour well wasted. No good, I said to Isaac as he turned off the ATV and climbed over it. Head back to the house, grab the chainsaw. We're gonna have to do it the hard way. Isaac looked around paranoid. Are you sure? I knew what he was asking. Are you sure you want to sit alone in the middle of the woods? I nodded my head, although hesitantly. He rode off. If I knew anything about these woods from the past month, it was safer to sit on the tree when the sun was high in the sky than it was for it to be pitch black out. Or at least that's what I told myself, despite my gut and the pit of my stomach saying otherwise. I checked out the roots of the tree, and I wanted to see just how deep they were, in case we were going to have to cut it in half, or if we could possibly just de-root it and drag it out. But it was clear out of the dirt all right, and not by any storm weather. The dirt was freshly dug, and you could tell because there were plenty of other trees covered in mud, and they smelled of rain, moss, and sludge. This one, though, the dirt was dry. The wood was mutilated. It looked like bite marks severed the remaining roots that were in the ground, and crude scratch marks covered the bottom of the trunk. This wasn't the work of Mother Nature. The sound of breaking branches gaining quickly from me from behind gained my attention, like the sound of a fully grown man running at me. I turned, and despite what I said earlier about my trigger finger, I fired off a few rounds. Nothing. Not a goddamn soul in sight. Whatever rounds I fired off, at least one hit a tree, because beside the clear forest view I had, the sound of a bullet ripping through the oak tree and the bark flying everywhere painted a pretty clear picture. This was all a distraction, just trying to hinder our progress. I stepped back onto the path just to hear the familiar roar of an ATV heading down this way. Isaac stopped, a branch cutter, a chainsaw, and other equipment strapped to the back of it. Are you alright? He asked. I didn't even look him in the eye. I was too focused on gazing around the forest. Yeah, I exhaled harshly, steam visible in the only relatively cool forest air. Let's get going. We were making pretty good progress despite the tight schedule we had to run on, not wanting to get caught out there at night too. So good, in fact, that by yesterday we managed to clean up 1.5 miles of the eastern side of the trail, passing right by Isaac's former camp spot. I stopped the ATV right around where I was last time. I knew that because of the heavy brake marks still somehow mildly embedded into the trail. Isaac gazed around confused. What? I jutted my head over the short cliff face. Want to see if you left anything? He gazed over to where I was and looked around inside. Seriously? Couldn't hurt. He muttered under his breath and shook his head as he hopped off, walking through the trees at the ready. I simply just turned the ATV and made my way through. As we rounded the cliff face, it was strange. He left nothing behind, that was for certain. But what I don't remember was him cleaning up an extinguished fire or the ring of rocks around it, or the stumps he cut down. The entire area looked like it was completely untouched, and that was only a week ago. Isaac didn't seem to notice this. What he did notice was something by the rock face that I didn't. Dwight? He said in a tone that I could recognize as anxious. That was new for him. I turned around. Then my brain shut off for a split second when I saw it. A cellar door. Barring some minor scratches and some weather marks, it was in near perfect condition. It was a cellar door. A large wooden bar kept the handles closed, and the entire thing was connected to the cliff wall, right exactly where his tent was. You didn't raise your tent over that, did you? I said, already knowing his answer. Isaac shook his head in response. It should be noted that, as much as I check in periodically, Isaac's demeanor, his slightly jovial, jokey, trucky sense of humor, and it's how he carries himself. So for me to see the look in his eyes, to see a full-grown man with a shotgun in his hands looking like a scared child, well, it's uncomfortable. Well, let's see what's inside. Isaac looked at me, silent, but his wide eyes spoke for himself. What? I asked. Not like we can just leave this shit out here. What if there are bastards sleeping in there during the daytime? I asked myself the other side of that question. I shouldered my rifle and pulled off the wooden bar. What were we going to do if an army of angry ghouls was waiting on the other side of that door, just waiting for a couple of schmucks to open it? I guess we really didn't need to worry about it because when I opened the door, Isaac aiming down his sights of his shotgun, it opened to nothing. A smooth, solid rock face. Hell, it didn't even look cemented over, or like rocks were dumped in it. It looked like someone just built a cellar door and never dug down. I laughed, honestly, because it was kind of funny. Both of us pissing ourselves and then open the door to that? I shook my head and I was about to give Isaac some shit for getting a bit unnerved, until I saw his face. Like I said, Isaac is usually a pretty funny guy. In one part, his sense of humor. Another part was, even as he saw what happened outside the gate about a week ago, he still found some time to take the piss out of all the danger. To see him standing there, gazing at a featureless rock face, he was probably looking how I looked when I saw the things during the lightning flash. "Isaac," I asked, only to see his breath was heavy, and now his hands were sweaty clutching the shotgun. "Isaac, for the love of..." He aimed the shotgun at the rock surface. "There's nothing there!" Thinking quick, I scrambled and pulled the door shut, kicking the other one closed. Isaac followed up by nearly dropping his goddamn gun, and hesitantly putting the wooden bar back across the cellar door. He stepped back and nearly vomited as he tried to catch his breath. "Isaac?" I asked. The man buckled over and he shook his head. "Isaac, what the fuck did you see?" He simply looked at me and shook his head. We're getting out of here." He walked back to the trail, and I called out again, "Isaac!" He still won't tell me what he saw or what happened. So, we finally reached it. Nearly a week of trying, trail clearing, and meeting the less dangerous but still just as weird inhabitants of the forest, all accumulated into us finally reaching the northern curve of the path. And surprisingly, it seemed barely touched. We expected weird shit. Hell, I expected some sort of pentagram made out of trees, rocks, and rabbit corpses, but no, nothing. We rounded the bend and I braked. Part of me really wanted to try and salvage the old ATV. It's not like shipping is quick to a dead-end area like this, and all of these ATVs are state-of-the-arts, literal trailblazers that aren't cheap. But sadly, my hopes were dashed. It wasn't on the path anymore. The barbed wire was still there, and so were chunks of tires still attached to it. The ATV was off to the side of the trail, in a tree. I think the chassis is scattered around the ground between the trees. Just to spite us, those damn bastards ripped that vehicle apart and spread literally every last part of it around the goddamn forest ground. I sighed, turning off the ATV and burying my face in my hands as I rubbed my eyes. God damn it. I hit the handlebars as I got up. Isaac looked around and said, "They sure did a number on it," kicking over one of the tires. Yeah. I headed over to what I could tell was probably an engine block, or what was left of one, and I had to pull it out from a small pit in the ground, but I freed it. Wow, it really stunk. A slight black coating all over the block. "Do you feel that?" Isaac blurted out as he gazed around at nothing in particular. I gazed up, inspecting the block. It must have really distracted me because I didn't notice it at first. He gave me a look that just said, "Really?" I looked around and I felt it. This burning sensation. The paranoia that causes a man to freak out when he's isolated. The feeling of being watched. But that wasn't what really unnerved me. It was the fact that not a bird or a cicada, not a goddamn thing around us could be heard. Nothing made a sound. "Hey, Dwight?" I remember John's voice piercing through the sound. His voice was almost bellowing through the radio. I stood up, tucking the engine block underneath my arm as I walked to the ATV, my free arm grabbing the radio. "What's up, John?" You've got a friend at the gate." The scraping sound of me forcing that damn black shit-coated ATV hunk onto the bed of the good one halted. "Friend?" I asked, a pit forming in my stomach. "Yeah, your friend. He said he knows you from Jordan. His name is Clancy?" "Dwight? Dwight? Dwight." John called from the radio several times, but I was already on the ATV so fast I think Isaac nearly had to jump on from being left behind. John asked again. "Dwight, what's wrong?" "Lock the door to the room, don't talk to it, don't look at it, don't even fucking breathe near the microphone," I barked into the radio. "But what?" "Just do as I say." Silence answered from the radio, but I could tell he got the message. Isaac was struggling to hang on to the vehicle as it bounced around freshly cleared land, but still just his rugged path. It wasn't until I finally got to the gravel driveway that I realized that he was trying to talk to me the entire way back. Jesus, Dwight, what the fuck is wrong? Isaac said as he stumbled off the ATV with me. I took my gun out of its sling and put the stock to my shoulder. Talk to me, soldier boy. Who the fuck is Clancy? I aimed down the sights as I scanned the nearby area, making my way to the receiver at the gate. Clancy was part of my platoon a few years back when I was part of infantry. I could see out of my peripheral vision that he looked confused. Maybe he didn't put two and two together. And? What is he, a shapeshifter? Maybe it overheard you two on the phone or something. Impossible. Why? I lowered my gun and looked him dead in the eyes. Clancy and a few of his battle buddies died back in 2010, in IED. I could see the tension in his body die down as he lowered his arms. I pulled him out of the truck myself. I remember shaking my head as I handed over the receiver, glazing into the black lens of the camera. I hadn't spoke a word about him since that day. The kicker wasn't just that, though. The receiver was clear, sure, but I even checked with John. The damn 4K camera was still in check. It was the fact that right where my old battle brother should have been standing, a dead circle of grass was there. It was a pretty damn stark contrast to all of the green around it. I've needed some time, understandably. This was a fucking hard pill to put down. Like I said, sorry. I picked myself up and started charting this down over the past few days. It is odd, though. The lights are flickering. I'm gonna post it where it is just in case the power goes out. I promise I will be back sooner than last time. This is far from over. I would like to thank all of the lovely patrons currently listed on screen right now. And if you would like to be a patron and get access to a nice little log of Patreon-only stories, please head over to the link in the description. Dan R, Chaos X, JY, Pyromancer, Hayden MH, Ethan A, Daniel H, Maximilian Charles P, GoGo Cute Puppy LLC, Young Sykes, and Dark Side of the Bear. Guys, thank you all so much.